Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And welcome to another Anfield Index special. So, ladies and gents, we had the five fighting forwards, we had the midfield minefield, and now we've got the defensive decisions one to sort. Because, let's be honest, the Reds made 0 defensive additions during the summer. So, there's a lot to talk about with the current state of the defence. Maybe state's too harsh, considering they are the sort of joint best defence in the Premier League right now. But we've got to talk individuals, we've got to talk potential summer reshuffles, who may stay, who may go, as the Clash said. So, as always, delighted to be joined by the regular crowd of Mark Evans and James Mckeen. So I'll come to you one by one rather than just getting a universal chorus. But Mark, how are we?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well.
We'll see if that's the case by the end of this. And James, yourself?
Very well. Yes, Steve, looking forward to this.
Yeah, this will be interesting. So let's get straight into the team for the season, what we think, what we're predicting, looking into the future a bit Mystic Meg style as well. So, I mean, we'll start with the keepers because there's only 2 that have sort of been between the sticks this season. Maybe thank God for that. And thank God more than anything, Mark, Alisson has been fit all season because, I mean, for me, he's unbelievable. He's still the best in the world and generally don't care what anyone or any opinion said. So if you're going to argue different, you can just hang up now, to be honest. But long story short for Alisson, what's been your best sort of moment or moments that you'd say really stood out for you this season for him?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree completely. Alisson's best in the world. I think he's a real shout now for all-time best Premier League goalie. He's in a list of kind of 3, I would say, to be that. And for me, he probably is. Because goalies kind of do get better, I think, year on year. The things they're asked to do, they have more abilities now, more kind of pressures of being good with their feet, all these things. And I think Alisson is the best all-round package of those things. And this season, I think he's been maybe at the best we've ever seen him for Liverpool. He's so consistently good, it's hard to kind of break those apart some of the seasons. But I think he's there or thereabouts the best we've ever seen him this season. The thing I really like about Alisson is it doesn't always come down to moments because he's so good kind of positionally and just flawless essentially in his stature, how quickly he comes out almost across the board, that he doesn't often get down to big moments, although he has had a few this season. It's kind of the way he gets out for these one-on-ones, he almost is the favourite to save them rather than the striker to score at this rate, which is, I mean, it's unheard of for a goalie to fancy your goalie to save a one-on-one, a proper one-on-one. But I genuinely do. Someone goes through with Alisson, and you still are frightened, but I have genuine faith that he is going to make the big save. He's made a bunch of great one-on-ones this season, but the save that stands out for me over the season is the Almiron strike in the Newcastle game. I don't know if you remember it. Touches it onto the bar, just. And because he does have that in his locker as well, he can do the big saves. He just so rarely gets called upon to do them because he's so good in his positional sense, how quick he is off his line. And Yeah, but that Almiron one, that was hit with venom almost into the top corner, and he somehow nudges it up at the bar. Just unbelievable, incredible save. I think before we had Alisson, I would have argued down the importance of your goalkeeper generally. And I've heard people kind of, say it's the most important position, all this. And I've always been so against that. I always think, strikers, goals, centre midfielder, all these things. But I think Alisson has really opened my eyes to the value of what a great goalkeeper is, Because, like you said, we're actually sitting with a really good defensive record this season. But my own personal experience of watching the games and being at the games is different to what the numbers say. I found they're shaky at times, and I found failings in the defensive midfield position, in the defending generally. And Alisson, for me, is the reason we are at that level statistically, because he's keeping us in these games time and time and time again.
Yeah, but it just is that good. I mean, James, it looks like you're trying to imitate the great man with that facial hair, in all honesty. It's just nice to see that being scrapped. But Mark's made a big comment there. Is he, for you, sort of the greatest you've ever seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's just phenomenal. And you know that if he plays and there's a one-on-one or there's a big shot, you know that we're going to have a good chance of not actually conceding, right? And the only thing I'm going to say about Alisson, okay, is that there's always a mistake in him. And there's a lapse of concentration. I don't know what that is, but it's something. Okay?
That's with his feet, I would say, predominantly, rather than his actual goalkeeping ability.
Absolutely. But again, if you think about the Premier League now, it's very much about feet. We play a lot of balls back to Alisson. So that's the only thing, because yes, we can, wax lyrical, and I think he is one of the greatest. However, we have to look at the negative connotation as well. And that is that he's not great. Sometimes he loses concentration, but other than that, I think he's like 100% the best, one of the best goalkeepers that Liverpool's ever had. 100%. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the trophies we've won, and you can think about, remember the Napoli save? Then we went on and we won. So that's just something there. My favourite was probably the two saves against Tottenham, Maddison and then Son's volley as well. Yeah. That would probably be my highlight from there. But to summarise it, when Alisson plays, you know that if there's a one-on-one or if there's a hard kind of chance against us, we've got a really good chance of that goalkeeper stopping it.
Yeah, he'd been unreal. Like say that Almiron sticks out, and even last weekend against Brentford, he made a couple of one-on-one saves from Buemo, doesn't it? That just kind of get forgotten, but game could have been so different. I mean, part of the leadership group, you can see. I mean, the fact that they talked about they've increased his wages to really high. Who cares? Worth every penny type of thing. He really is that good. But on the other side, Jamesy, your countryman, Queeve, Kelleher. So been in the cup games, hasn't he? The Europa, the domestic a bit as well. It's difficult for Queeve, I always think, because he's not going to get a run ever. That's just the nature of his role type of thing, his age, there's all those bits. But there was a few questions after the Toulouse game specifically, hasn't there? The two Toulouse games, I should say, the one where, a couple of shank clearances, could he do better on the one-on-one, especially when we shipped 3 away? He didn't exactly look convincing. But, I mean, you may think I'm being harsh on him this season. How highly should we be rating Kelleher, honestly?
Honestly, I mean, ask yourself this question: who could you see that's deputising for Liverpool? Really, what keeper is going to more or less, because he knows he's not going to be set first, and he understands, but he's learning from one of the best. So every season he stays with us, he learns a wee bit better, and you can see that. Now, I think it's unfair to say about Toulouse, right, home and away, because no matter whatever way you want to cut it and slice it, I'm not going to say it's a priority to Liverpool, right? But I think that if you've seen him in a Premiership game, it would be completely different. I think we're naive when it comes into these European games. And that's only my opinion. I think that when it comes in, when you think about LASK, you think about Union and you think about Toulouse, would you say they're top tier teams? Absolutely not. So I think Kelleher, number one, for he's only 24, 25, he's got a lot of growing to do as well. He's great with the ball, and he's made fantastic saves. Remember the save he made against Lask, and we were under pressure there with his feet, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. And also as well is to keep that kind of concentration. So again, you're probably going to see in the next, in the Cup and also in the Caribou Cup, a better performance as well.
Big defence there, Mark. Are you in the same camp? Are you defending Kelleher, thinking he's good for what it should be?
I guess it depends kind of on the context there, doesn't it? Like what bar are we judging him by? If you're comparing him to Alisson, then he's garbage essentially compared to Alisson for me. He doesn't add up in any department to Alisson. If you're looking at him as how good is he to be our second goalkeeper?
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
I guess the only way you could look at that is to compare our rival teams as second goalkeeper, see like where does he rank in those sort of things. And I think he's kind of there or thereabouts as good, if not better than those. I think where it's kind of changed this season with Kelleher is a lot of us, I think, had the opinion that maybe he would leave us last year or even the year before and maybe go on to be a really good Premier League goalkeeper in his own right. He looked like he had that potential for me. Looked pretty clean across all things. Whereas now, most times he comes in, I see little cracks in him, that I maybe didn't see a couple of years ago. I would maybe say at the age bracket he's getting to, it's becoming less about the potential for me now. It's more like he's arriving at the place he's going to be, there or thereabouts. James is right, there's still a couple of years to go on that, but much different than he was at age 20 when you're saying like, wow, if he continues on this path, where does that lead for him? Now I think it's more like, is he a Premier League goalkeeper? Is he ever going to be? And I think I would probably fall into the no, he's not going to be. I don't think he's quite at the level personally.
Yeah, it's one of those. Well, I'll say this, Jamesy, because I know what you're saying. I know you like Kelleher. The big thing for me, though, is a little bit what Mark said. The idea of Kelleher is better than the reality it tends to be when we see him, because the big thing you have for Kelleher, like you say, young potential, good with his feet. Those are the three things, you really sort of look at. And I know he shouldn't just base it all on one or two games, but to lose, he shanks that clearance. Do you remember when Trent has to block it on the line completely? There was another time he got caught against Lask, which is true, James, because I know in the same game you mentioned he makes a great save, so there's that mix-up. To lose, he probably should do better on the one-on-one. If you remember where they score, he's so far across to his... And it is hard in a way because, as you said, Alisson, you believe he's going to save a one-on-one, don't you? Kelleher, you don't really believe it. It does if it's a bonus, isn't it, really? But the big thing I would say for Kelleher is, like you alluded to, Mark, I think he should have left for his own development, really, because he's not going to get it. He's moving into that difficult age. He's going to be our Jesse Lingard soon enough if he's not careful, type of thing. Yeah. But a couple of years ago, we were raging supreme about him. Do you remember when we won the Carabao and the FA, and he made those penalty saves and that? If you're honest, his stock has fallen since then, Jamesy. That's the honest thing I would say. The more you see him, the less you're impressed. Doesn't make him a bad player, but that's just the facts of what I'm seeing at the moment, being honest.
Yeah, and what you can also look at there is from Liverpool's point of view, they've let his stock fall. There was a prime time to sell him, and get as much out of that as we could have for a player that cost us nothing, essentially. That could have been reinvested. You have another young goalkeeper coming through to kind of play that role next time, and I think there was talk of like 25 million a couple of summers ago. It was like a serious fee. No chance getting that now.
So your second choice goalkeeper would be who? Because that's what it really comes down to. Because we can't get the quality that wants to be first, because they'll never be first because of Alisson. He's supreme. What happens?
Indeed, for me, the situation would be that, and I'll probably be butchering his name, but I think it's the young Brazilian Petuglia, I think it's pronounced, would move into that goalkeeping group. I think because of the nature of what Liverpool play, if he's the young one, I don't think you necessarily need another youngster. What you need is an experienced head that when the game comes can just switch on like that isn't nervous, still develop. He's got a ton of experience who can just come in and do the job. And that's not to dig out Kelleher at all. It's just the reality of what we're seeing. But don't worry, Jamesy, you will get a chance when we talk about the summer reshuffle at the end to say if you want to keep him or where you go from there. But, I mean, lads, let's talk about the defence. It seemed crazy this season. There were 0 additions. We were all, if we're honest, let's boil it down. We were a little bit nervous, weren't we? A little bit panicked. The names were in fruition, weren't they? The Inacios, the Colwells, we were expectant. Nothing happens. There was a bit of panic. The injury to Robbo, questions about players, all those types of things. So there's been a lot to sort of mull over. But whatever we think about it, Liverpool are the equal best defence in the Premier League this season, and there's a lot to talk about in that regard. And Mark, we got to start at the captain. We've literally got to start at the captain. There's no other place you can go, VVD. I mean, this is the shortest question. And if you don't wax lyrical, you can get off right now. But is he back to his best? Is he just looking amazing again?
Yeah, he is. But there's your answer. He is. Absolutely is. Completely. He looks incredible. I deliberately didn't kind of talk about it earlier when we were talking about Liverpool having the best defensive record. And to me, it comes in 2 parts. For the first bit, we've, extensively gone into Alisson, and he's half of it. The other half is Van Dijk. Those are the 2 primary reasons that we have that defensive record this season, because both of them have been outstanding. And I've always kind of been of the belief in the clock time that if you get Alisson, Salah and Van Dijk all kind of on tip-top form, it just makes for a really good season. Those are the seasons you're going for trophies. And so far, kind of touch wood, it seems like we're headed for that, So yeah, like in a nutshell, with Van Dijk, he looks incredible. As we go into the defence across the board and do individual players, you'll kind of see from what I say on various different guys that I'm not really sure on a lot of them. Not to say that I don't think we should keep them or should keep them. I'm genuinely not sure where we're at with a few of them. A lot of them are at crossroads for me, and I'm really, really don't know which way it's going to go for them, kind of thing. The only one of our starting defenders that I'm just absolutely certain about in every way is Van Dijk. I think, he's getting down to that 1 year left on his deal when the summer comes, and I think, to me, it's critical that we get Van Dijk on a new deal now and, get him signed up, because as we'll go into, there are question marks across almost everybody else in the whole defensive line. We need Alisson and Van Dijk to be, the things we build around in that defence, because they're still kind of, you can call it bias, but the best centre-back and the best goalkeeper in the world for me. We've got a really great thing to build around there as far as creating another really solid defence. I would love to see us go and do that.
Yeah, they are 2 massive key elements of the spine. I mean, James E, same for you, looking Van Dijk back to his best, got to get him renewed.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And what I like as well is we've got an up and coming. So if you think about Van Dijk, you've got Gravenberch and then you've got Gakpo. So you've got a nice spine of the same nationality that can come together. But what impresses me is the pass rate. So, obviously everything goes through Van Dijk. And that's exactly, that goes back to your point, Mark, saying that when Van Dijk's playing well, Alisson's playing well, and Salah's playing well, we blow teams away. When Van Dijk's kind of stuttering, that's when we're like, oh, and that's a challenge. Moving into the season, he's already says that he feels a lot better. He says that he feels like he doesn't even feel his ACL anymore, and that's fantastic. Also headed as well. So there's Canady and there's Van Dijk, and that aerial presence to have that at the back is, you know. So to answer your question, Dave, absolutely, I think he's back to his best. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, literally, as you alluded to that, all the metrics like the tackles, even the long range passing just stands out against anyone else, especially against even Brentford the other week, didn't we? We saw some of those. Love to see them again. The crossfield, long diagonals to Salah, that type of thing. It's great to see that coming back. Even you've probably seen the clip in the international, a couple of great, probably bad for you, Jamesy, but great blocks against Ireland, wasn't it? Sliding in last. It's just good to see him essentially doing it all, looking back to what he was. And I think it's all right to say that, especially after what happened last season, not just him, but to the team. And I know you can argue about the protection in front of him, but it looks very, very different. So, yeah, the captain, Christ, we've got to get that renewed. And speaking of a player that will have 12 months left to go on his contract in the summer, Jamesy, maybe the most topical one, the most interesting. If we talked about the captain, got to talk about the vice-captain, because it's been an interesting season for Trent, hasn't it? Almost, sometimes it's been as much what's talked about on the field as it is off the field, with Southgate, his role with England, the formation, all those types of things. And this is probably a short question, but it ain't a straightforward answer. Is Trent our long-term right back?
Short answer, no.
Oof.
I think so. His metrics, when you look at how much he gets run past, we always know that we're weak down that right side. You can see when people when players are on that right side, teams always attract into Trent. I think he's a fantastic crosser of the ball. He has great vision. Defensively, there's always an error in him. Always, like, think about Newcastle as well. That, you know, and kind of it rolled across, and there's a couple of other just saying, you know, keep it simple, Trent. You know, sometimes the concentration goes when it's the defense. I honestly think that he has to move into the midfield, but then that brings up the question: what happens? Because then you've got Szoboszlai, you've got McAllister, you've got Curtis Jones. You know, are we going to bring in a 6? Are we going to play in formation? There's so many different questions that we're going to ask. But again, to bring it back to the point, I honestly can't see him playing right back. I think he goes up into centre back, and they nearly build the team around him because he is that good, right? Like, he's only 25 and he's won everything. He's a Scouser lad, and he loves the club. So yes, I would renew him, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. The thing is, Mark, with Trent, obviously there's a Southgate comment, and then I'm sure you've read it. He did the interview himself, didn't he, with the Times? He's been quite almost explicit for me. I didn't like that personally, to be honest. Do you think in Trent's head, this is him seeing like the end of the right-back phase with the new formation, or do you think this hybrid is, you know, how he's seeing it? What do you think's going on in his mind?
Like, I've previously seen Trent say things along the lines of, I'll do whatever is asked of me, you know, I'm never going to cause trouble or whatever. But the interview he did with the Times this week was a little different than that. I thought the tone was different. Really, to me, was making a point of, I don't want to do this anymore, really. You know, it seemed like he was not drawing a line in the sand, and I don't think he ever would do that, you know, not to Klopp anyway. Be interesting to see what would happen after that, you know, with a less influential, powerful manager, you know, ahead of him, if he felt like he had a little more clout there to stake his claim in midfield or whatever. But I think, forgetting what Trent said, because, you know, that's just his opinion. If you're just, you know, taking our own opinions on what we're seeing, what we're experiencing of him at right back, the real thing for me that comes back time and time again is application. I just don't think he's trying hard enough at the defensive side of the game, because when he came through as a young lad, like, he's not a worse defender now than then. That's not possible. You couldn't get worse, but he is performing worse. When he first came through, you know, those Champions League games that he was kind of thrust into against guys like Messi and, like, you know, the highest end of concentration and quality against him, He performed brilliantly in those. There was only like one or two of the early games, I think that one against Rashford in particular, where against United, where he struggled a little bit. But by and large, he really applied himself. He stuck to his job. He did the simple things well. And it really has been like 2 years now almost of what could only be described as laziness for me. He just doesn't seem to want to defend. And that interview he's done with the Times actually kind of backs that up for me, because he clearly doesn't want to be a defender. He's almost saying it now, and we're seeing it. So to me, that's going to come to a head sooner or later, because Klopp will be seeing that and, also wondering, where is his head at then? Is he into this? What is the reason we're seeing these feelings, because his heart isn't in it, kind of thing? And then it was like James is saying, where do you go from there? What do you do with that? Because we've already signed, because, the right side's the one he'd be playing on. I don't think he's got a 6 in him, because the same defensive failings would be there, if you will. He's not good looking over his shoulder. That just doesn't make, to me, he'd be the kind of number 8 on the right side there. And we've got a fantastic one in the summer. I can't see that Trent would, supplant him. So it's a worry, actually, if I'm being honest. I don't really know how that's going to play out. I think he is so good. I love watching him for England in midfield. I think he could be a midfielder. I'm not worried about his abilities. I'm just worried about how we squeeze it in, basically.
Yeah, I agree. And even back to James's point, there was a mistake at Newcastle. That Bournemouth, he got away with one, didn't he, offside, and then make the same mistake a few minutes later. I agree. I just think with Trent, it's not about skill. It's about his will. I just don't think he really wants to be that right back anymore, which for whatever reason, and we dish it up, we're talking about the guy who was the world's best right back for a good few years. We're still in the debate, but and this not to be derogatory, but obviously he's moved that position, the hybrid, the way it works. And I agree. The biggest worry for me is great, we move him up. Where? The only way I see it is almost it would have to be a bit reorganised, like a 4-2-3-1, where he'd have to be in the double pivot, so to speak. Like they're trying to sort of not fudge him in, but slide him in now. So I do think there's a big question mark. Obviously, we keep Trent renewing. We've said that, no doubt. But Trent's long-term future has got a big question mark, not in terms of ability, but position, desire, how that works out. It will be interesting to see, really will. And one player it would be interesting to see if we could actually see him more this season, Mark. Big Ibu. We love him, the things he does, his qualities and his attributes, but another injury at the moment. Another injury. He's out. He's not with the French team. We're hoping, fingers crossed, he's back for the City game. With these injuries now that you're looking at Ibu's record, have you got sort of long-term concerns now about relying on him as a regular starter sort of week in, week out?
Yeah, I do. I think the thing with centre-backs that's kind of different than other areas of the field is you do kind of have to build a chemistry for me between a partnership, two. You want to rely on them. It's not the kind of thing where, like, say, Thiago, right? Forgetting how bad it's been this season, but in his other seasons with Liverpool, he's dropped out for 5-6 games at a time very regularly, in his time at Liverpool. But he's so good, he kind of just comes back in, and it's not about kind of chemistry or whatever. He just comes in and then he's good again. That's fine. And then we lose him again. And it's great when we've got him, and, a shame when we don't. But you don't kind of lose that chemistry across the midfield. Just someone else comes in and plays the role. Whereas I feel it's a little different than that at centre-back. I think it's really important. If you look at our bigger seasons, Gomez got a whole clean season next to Van Dijk, and they got a nice rapport there. We've had a couple of Matip ones, and I felt like Kanate had a really good one season before last. And now we've kind of got to the stage where it looks like you're going to get 2 or 3 injuries a season that are going to all be, because they all seem to be muscle injuries with him, which is those are the ones you worry about, because they tend to be consistent. A player that gets these keeps getting these. You can look across all these miserable field signings we've had over the years. It's the same story with all these guys, small strains, but they add up to months of injury over the season. So I've got a few numbers to throw at you from Kanate's kind of injury history, which is in 1920 season, he basically missed the entire thing with injury when he's at Red Bull. The following season, he misses 4 months, and then later on another 2 months in the season. The following season, 2 months. The following season, 2 months, then another month. If you add all that up, so I'm going to give you 6 years in a row here of how many games he played across all competitions. So 20, 43, 11, 21, 29, and 24. So there's only one season in 6 where he's managed to get over 30 games, and that's really poor. Just to give you a bit of context on that, this is Van Dijk's over the same 6-year period. And I want you to keep in mind here that Van Dijk has missed a whole season in amongst this. So it's 41, 51, 8, which is the injury season, 50, 50, and 22, another season where there were injuries. And to give you the total of those, so Konaté in that 6-year period has 148 appearances, and Van Dijk has 222, having missed an entire season in the 6. It really is night and day, that. And, we wax lyrical about Van Dijk and his qualities, but it's the same as Salah and all these other guys. The most important thing is being out there. You have to be available, Like I said, Thiago, what a wonderful player, but he's been a useless addition to the squad this season for big parts of other seasons. You need to be available. And unfortunately for Konaté, I don't think anyone can have any confidence that he's going to put in 30, 35, 40 appearance seasons year after year. I just don't think he's got that in him.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I mean, Jamesy, that's pretty damning. Looks like you've got someone else who's got an opinion on Konaté there. But, I mean, is it similar for you? Were you just thinking, yeah, can't rely on him type of job?
I love him. I think he's a brilliant player. But again, talking about Mark, obviously Liverpool would have researched this and they would have looked and said, look, this guy's injury prone, but the way if we play him, hopefully he'll turn good. I think we've discussed before, Matip's injury record before he came to Liverpool, Schalke, he was never injured. He had 6 seasons that had just absolutely nearly clean seasons. And then he came to Liverpool and you know how much of a start and stop and how much we love him. But again, he's not consistent, that kind of way. When it comes to Konaté, Upamecano and Konaté were supposed to be the running of the show with the French, and that's not turned out that way because he is so injury prone. So the manager has to look at him and say, right, well, who's next? Who's the next one coming through? So with Konaté, I think there's a real worry there, absolutely, and I think Klopp has to look at it, because our back line, we're only one away from an emergency. Let's face it, boys. We are only one. One of them could get injured now, and we're one for emergency. Imagine Van Dijk, goodness, if that would happen. But that would be a tough call to take. But Konaté, I think that we need to get a bit of a replacement for him. I think he's not robust enough.
Yeah, it is worrying, like you say, especially the stats. I mean, we don't even know he's going to be back for this City game, do we? And it's the muscle injury, like you said, Mark, already. It was so early in the season as well. Bournemouth, then he misses the Newcastle game, just about back for Villa. And then this one, we know he's missing Brentford, and then there's a couple of weeks off. And the thing is, Klopp's trying to play all the, Deschamps and France. It's like, no, the history speaks for itself. It's not France, is it? Let's be honest. It's just a history. So, that's the other concern. And I mean, you kind of mentioned him there. echoes of Joel Matip, to be honest, Jamesy. I mean, although to be fair, we'll keep this bit short, but Big Joel's had a bit of a renaissance this season, hasn't he? To be honest, he's doing all right when he's called upon. Is he doing well enough, Jamesy, to bring into the bracket for a renewal, bearing in mind he will be 33 this summer?
Joel Matip is one of those players that as soon as he gets played and he plays an absolute fantastic game, it takes him a couple of games to recover. Okay, so I think he's one of those. I'd never think that he could kind of play a whole season for Liverpool. I think he'll end up getting injured. Like, for example, the Spurs game. Oh my goodness, like, who was that guy? He just was unbelievable. However, again, laggy legs, and it's all that recovery. So we have to take that into consideration. Is there potential there to bring someone else in? But it's that experience. Like, you can't buy that experience at the back. Then, even if you're bringing a young lad in and kind of just sort of gelling him in, that's the challenge you have. Who do you bring in there that's going to kind of be able to be a leader as well? Because that's what's really good about Liverpool's back line. They're very experienced, bar Kanate and Kwanzaa, but they're very, very experienced. And that's the challenge you have. How do you bring someone in who has less experience versus being there, done that, bought the t-shirt?
I mean, that is true, Mark. But on the other side, when we're talking about Matip, we're talking about Matip's injury history. We just talked about Kanate's injury history. We haven't even got to Gomez's injury history there. Is he doing enough to bring into the renewal equation, or is it a nice parting of the ways your gut's telling you?
I think it's a tough one. Like I said, I would accept a lot of outcomes across the defence. If Klopp decided to bin off Kanate for the reasons we just said, and replace him with a real starter, a proper 50, 60 million pound incoming, I would accept that. If he decided to keep Kanate, not renew Matip, get him out and get a replacement in for him who's going to be the starter, I would accept that. If he decided to cash in on Gomez and make that the big money replacement and keep the other two, I would probably accept that. There's a lot of outcomes there that the only one is Van Dijk stays, need him, and we probably do need another one to come in. But how he would decide to kind of do that, I honestly would kind of accept any way Klopp decided to do it. For me personally, I think Matip is the one that I would pick to go, just because of the age bracket. Basically, Gomez and Kanate just have years and years on him. Yeah. The fact is, the three of them have injury problems quite consistently, so you can call that a negative on Matip, but it's also a negative on Kanate and things. So the only way I really split them ultimately is Matip's 33 in the summer, and at very best, you've got one more year. The upspin of Gomez and Kanate is there's still value in them. There's no reason that they don't improve a little bit more. I think there's pace in the other two that Matip doesn't really have anymore. It's kind of splitting hairs, but I think if pressed to do it, Matip would be the one I would probably lose, I think.
Yeah, and I can agree with that argument. But like you said, you can make arguments kind of across the board, which is maybe disappointing in one sense. I mean, to bring in the other senior boy, that Joe Gomez. I mean, again, it's always want to put them on the block. Joe Gomez has played every role, Mark, hasn't he? He's been centre back in certain games. He's played, not only just played right back, he's played the Trent hybrid, which has kind of astounded us all at times as well. And then as other games, only one or two now, but he's covered the left back role as well. I mean, the thing for sort of Gomez, is he actually key now to the squad, as in the utility man, the Swiss Army knife? Or do you think he could actually almost have a shot? I know it's going back 18, 19, maybe beyond. Could he have a shot at being Van Dijk's regular partner? Are we just being too harsh on him that way?
Yeah, I mean, Gomez is the hardest one to kind of nail your opinion down on, because his form changes, he gets injured, he plays in various different positions at varying levels of ability. For me right now, and I'm kind of just going on this season because I think his form's been much better, much better.
Yeah.
Much more consistent. He looks kind of confident again. I've got a little more faith in him. And because we've got this Robertson injury in particular, I wouldn't actually be looking at the place next to Van Dijk. I would be looking the other side of Van Dijk. and that maybe he should be our starting left back at the moment because, well, with Robertson out, when it comes to the big games like City at the weekend, I would be far more confident having Joe Gomez there at left back than I would Tsimikas personally. And I guess if we do get injuries with the other two, Matip and Kanate, I'm perfectly happy for Gomez to come in at centre back as well. So, I mean, the question kind of is he key to the squad? And yes, he is for me. He really is, because even at right back now, if we're talking about Trent coming out of there, I'm pretty happy with Gomez there also. That's pretty much right across the back line. I'm fairly happy with him in any of those slots. I don't think he's, if you go back to like our best seasons, I don't think he's of the level of how good our back line has been across those years. I don't think he would be, I think Kanate is basically better than him as a centre back. I think Robertson is better than him as a left back, and I think Trent is better than him as a right back. But as far as like an understudy goes across all those positions, I think he's really good. Really, not many teams would have a utility man of that level that ultimately seems to have accepted that role. He hasn't spat the dummy, which is quite key, to have guys like that. I always remember back in the horrible days growing up with United winning everything, and there was so many these sort of utility players that Ferguson always had, and it always annoyed me that he could have these guys and somehow keep them happy in the squad. And Klopp seems to have that little gift as well. He seems to keep them engaged enough that they're willing to do that and be part of it, and they kind of know their chances will come, the same as they did with Ferguson's United teams. They do get runs in the team. He does throw Gomez in here, there, and unexpectedly so. Gives you that chance to claim the jersey, if you will. I hope he's happy to keep doing it. I think with the form he's shown this year, we shouldn't really be questioning Joe Gomez this season. I think we should be just pretty happy with what we're getting there.
Yeah, it has been impressive. And James, I'll come back to you on Gomez naturally at the end when we're talking about sort of renew, how we see things as well, or whether we're moving people on. But I think in the interest of the time, and this is an important kid to talk about for so many reasons, Jarell Quansah. I mean, probably the sort of a standout that not come from nowhere. Maybe that's too extreme. The old famous Roy Keane, Micah Richards burst onto the scene type of thing. But the level he's jumped up, really. I mean, there's this feeling of, are we hyping this kid too quickly against when we see him? He looks brilliant. It's that balance. And it's obviously been against the summer that Colwell, Inacio, and those names are the ones he gets compared now to, aren't they? Let's just be honest, which could be a good thing, could be a stick to use against him in the future. I mean, when you're looking at Quansah, how good do you think this kid could honestly be in real context?
It's a good question. I think he's fantastic, but it's hard to know what he's actually capable of because he hasn't had a run in the Premier League. Like the way that we're kind of talking about these kind of things is we're talking about the European matches with a lower tier, and this is what we're kind of basing on. Yes, he's very composed on the ball. He's an absolute monster. But again, I think it's just too early to tell, Dave. I really do. When we think about Gomez when he was 20, we were talking about he could be one of the best. And then he had that horrendous injury on his knee. He had 2 operations and then kind of changed his whole game. I think it's too early. I think that we could have this conversation when he's maybe 24 and 25, when he's coming into it a bit. But he needs to play games. However, when he's asked, he's fantastic. But again, like Dave, another thing as well is with Quansah, but we've also got and we forget about him, and I don't know if he's going to get sold, but there's a lot of hype in the Bundesliga about Van den Berg as well. He's playing centre back, and he seems to be setting he had a bad injury last year, but this year he's setting the Bundesliga on fire. So it's something to think about when we're talking about these guys. But I think Quansah is something to watch because we've had Quansah. We've also had De Berg, and then we also had Billy the Kid, and we were all thinking, right, this is going to be the next best thing. But again, if you think about those 3, it's probably Kwanzaa's up there. And even Williams as well. He's head and shoulders above Williams, when we actually had Williams playing for the Premier League. So, yes, I think he's one to watch, but I think it's too much pressure to put on the kid.
Look at this, Mark. He comes on the pod. He gives it all that we're going to win every game in these months. And now you ask him about one player that's grabbing the headlines. He's like, nah, we're just cautious and things. Are you of the same sort of keep it on the even keel for Jarell Quansah, or you like to get carried away with this type of stuff now and again?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty carried away over here. I think he's, I think he looks outstanding. I liked what James kind of did there with looking at all the other young ones we've had over the years that we've had expectations of. And even with the small sample size we've had of Quansah, none of the guys on the list there, Billy Commuter, it was called, Phillips, Williams, there's a whole bunch of them, young lads that have had a go. None of them have been at the level we've seen from him. Every single display he's had since he's come in has been at a higher level than any of them produced, even at their best. So just going by that alone, or even looking further back in history to let's say your Martin Kelly's, other kind of young guys who have come through, through our academy. Again, I didn't ever see them play with the kind of composure that I'm seeing from Quansah. I think there's no guarantees with these things. There never is with young players. But I think everything we've seen from him so far is just hugely, hugely promising. I think, world at his feet, keep doing it, go and grab it. We're at a stage like we've just talked about where there's a couple of the centre-backs who we aren't sure if we can rely on, if they're still going to be here. Perfect time to go and claim your third or your fourth centre-back spot. And I kind of think he will. I really do. I think he will. I think he'll claim one of those.
Yeah, I do as well. I kind of get what you're saying, James. I think the whole thing needs to be tempered. But when you've seen him, that tough half-12 against Wolves, he was the best defender by a mile in the first half. An absolute best defender, probably arguably in the second half when the performance changed. That Bournemouth game in the Carabao, the weather was horrendous, wasn't it? And again, when more experienced heads were kind of flapping at times, he looked the one. Everyone remembers that little sort of Cruyff drag back, don't they, on the touchline, the calm, the composure. I almost like the way he plays as well. He almost, the way I'd describe it, plays chicken against defenders. He invites them onto him, to knock it around and move it. He seems so calm and composed. He's also captain England to success, by the way, at a young level. This kid has got all the hallmarks of leadership. The big thing that I think has got to be protected, I mean that word, and Jurgen Klopp will protect him. It was right the way to say, oh, well, look at if he could have been Ignacio, Colwell. Those are the two common names. What has to be the case is he's going to make a mistake, because nothing makes a mistake in football like a 20-year-old centre-half. It's the definition of going to make a mistake in football. And because he plays for Liverpool, the pressure and all that, it's going to come at some point. That's got to be expected. They'll know it's coming. It's about the fans not going, as the Chelsea people will throw the gifts in, and all that. It's about not getting on his back too much and giving him that development time. But all that being said, he can only do it when he's called upon. And every time he's called upon, it's been pretty damn good so far. So you've got to put that in context. So in summary, James, completely wrong. So we'll move on to the next one then. And this will be a short one. Oh, Kostas Tsimikas. Mark, this is a weird one. He renewed, which probably surprised a lot of people. I know it surprised us because we talked about it. It's not what we, in previous pods we expected to happen. We thought he'd been gone. He's been a bit derided. He got a couple of assists. It's fair to say it's important to put that on the block the other week, but there's been less than convincing performances. Let's say that. Has Tsimikas got a long-term future at Anfield for you?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short because I don't like to slam players when it's not going well. And I don't think it's for a lack of trying with Tsimikas. I just don't think he's at the level we need. And I think he's progressively kind of got worse, actually, in his time at Liverpool. There were times where his crossing and things, I thought they were like assets, even though there were defensive frailties for me always. But I think just the whole package is lowered and doesn't look confident. He's getting caught on the ball in really lazy looking ways. I never like when I see his name on the team sheet now, if I'm honest. It's fine in the European games or whatever, but I don't want to see him playing Premier League games for Liverpool, if I'm honest. I really don't. I think he's he's potentially a banana skin for us. He's in danger of losing us points. I think it's that bad, unfortunately, with him now. And yeah, I just think it's been a nice thing. I liked his character. I liked all this Greek Scouser stuff he did. He tried to kind of get into it all, and unfortunately, he was behind one of the best left backs we've seen, this decade in Robertson, and hasn't had enough chances. And for whatever reason, it's culminated in him losing confidence, and maybe just not enough has gone right for him. Luck wise, all things considered, I just think it's run its course now, and we should look to move him on, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And I agree with that. Obviously, the whole Greek Scouser, it seems a popular lad in the dressing room as well, passes the no dickhead test, which we know Klopp's big on. I mean, Jamesy, can you see any long-term future for Kostas at Anfield, being honest?
The only thing I would say is he came out and he did an interview, and it was all about his mental health. And then he got that kind of cleared away, and then he's assisted, and that's probably one of the best games you've seen him play against Brentford. He was creative, but I know what you guys are saying. Like, is he good enough to, i.e., that if our left back's injured, can he deputise? Probably not. I would probably shift them on, but it's a bit of a head scratcher. Like, why did they renew him? Is it that there's maybe some value there, and they're going to play him in the summer and try and get a transfer out of him? It's a bit of a head scratcher, because you're like, well, where do you even sit? And I guess when we look at it, it's very much he's a cult hero, right? When he put that penalty in, that was it. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. I think, being honest, it sounds blunt. The renewal was about asset protection, to be honest, that they weren't going to move, obviously with what's happened. And, he puts a few years in his contract, asset protection in that sense. I think the biggest thing for me that overrides with Tsimikas as well, with the formation change, we know that defender on the left's almost become like a third centre-back at times, hasn't it? They don't have that ability to sort of bomb on. Now, if you're going to get the best out of Tsimikas, almost like the season a couple of years ago, it's about letting him bomb on and whipping the crosses. That's what he's about, isn't he? You take the defensive frailties, let's put it that way at best. But if there's question marks around Andy Robertson sometimes in this formation, Christ knows what there is about Kostas. And it's like you say, it's not about hammering players, but he's struggling to see a long-term one. I mean, speaking of long-term, and this is the only real defender left on the block, Jamesy, Robbo. There's been a few question marks around Robbo. People have got different opinions. It seems to be not polarising, but the next one now, Hendo's gone, that seems to have a few question marks, let's put it that way, for different reasons put against him. How long would you say we've got before the question marks against Robbo? And that's not to say he's sort of degrading at all, but he's not young anymore, isn't he? He's moved into that 30 bracket. He's had the injuries. How long before do you think the questions will start to grow, shall we say?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I think it really comes down to, let's see when he comes back from his shoulder surgery, and let's see how the rest of the season plans out. Again, if you want me to fight Robbo's corner, if you think about that left side, so that's changed completely. So, he used to have Wijnaldum, and then again, used to have Mane, completely different last season. You could see that he was lost, and you could see Klopp saying, right, well, what do I need to do here? And again, he's brilliant for Scotland. He wears his, he's really good. And again, that influence, you can't buy that experience. You need that mixture between experience and obviously the younger. And if you think about that midfield, it's very, very young. And then again, you've got that experience. And does he play a little bit different in the next couple of seasons? Does he not play that kind of fullback, and is he more of a defender? Because he's a great defender as well. Seen him absolutely fantastic tackles, good interception. I like his vision, his composure, especially when he's standing up and he's not lunging in. He's a great asset to Liverpool. So I would say that, again, let's wait till the end of the season, and then we'll make the decision from there.
Interesting. Mark, I know, because you're proud Scottish man. I know you love Robbo, that type of thing. Have you, I know you're going to have heard it as well. Have you had any question marks sort of around Robbo this season or into his long-term future at all?
Yeah, I think like as time goes on, there's definitely something in the fact that guys can age poorly in a Klopp team. I do think the legs, you get a lot asked of you physically, in these big, grueling 60-game seasons. And Robbo's often pretty fit. He's available for most of these games, so he tends to do that. And then he, as James said, has to go off and play for Scotland, but he's also key for Scotland, so he can't miss any of those either, where a lot of guys maybe pull the odd international game and don't go. Robbo doesn't really do that. He goes out and plays 3 grueling games for Scotland after a massive Liverpool calendar. And I think that's starting to tell a little bit. But I also think he's one of the casualties of this hybrid system. Again, you kind of touched on it. I just don't think it quite suits his skill set. Add into that the fact that he lost Manny, who he had just a great understanding with down that left side. The Diaz and Robbo combination's never been quite right for me. I think that's one of the reasons I don't think it's been spot on with Diaz, is the combo's not been quite right, but it's also hurt Robbo. There's no doubt about that. So if you add all those things together, the legs are just slightly slower than they were 2 years ago. He's not got the partnership he had, and also the formation's become a little more difficult for him. Put all that together, I think that's why we're seeing a slightly lower level of performance, rather than, because the effort's always there with Robbo. That's one thing. You always get everything he's got for 90 minutes every time. For me, we've not reached the kind of the place we got to with Henderson and Fabinho. I don't think we're at critical levels where it's like, this needs sorted now. He's done. I think there's still something to give there. It's a broader point and a much longer debate, but I think I would like to see this formation change ultimately, because I think there are too many bits now, and Robbo's one of the big ones where we're just not getting as much out of people as we should be. Trent's not defending as well on the right side. We're losing that bit in Robbo. I think I would prefer to see us back in the old sort of 4-3-3 that we had before, or the double pivot with Trent in there, or however you want to do it, just to get the most out of these guys, because you're asking a lot to go and get new starters in this position, in that position, and a centre back, a right back, where does it end, sort of thing. Whereas the formation changing might give you, okay, now we don't have to worry about Robbo next year. We've got our left back sorted for one more year, and then we can think about the left back one and maybe tackle the ones that are more critical in the moment. So I think you give Robbo another full year. Hopefully the shoulder injury, because it's not a muscle one, he's hopefully got a bit of resting done here as well, which he hasn't had much of an opportunity to do. So he might come back with a little more gusto, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say, but actually a good few months rest in Andy Robbo's legs might not be the worst thing for him, so to speak, as well. So, and he's still going to be able to train, as we understand. I kind of agree with the formation thing and Robbo being one of the casualties. The one thing is, with the midfielders we've got in, it does have that feeling of, we're trying to solve a problem that isn't there anymore. The whole problem was having no midfield basically last season, and we've got legs, we've got physicality, but it seems there's no evidence we can say that it's going to go. It seems here to stay at the moment. Anyway, so we're at decision time, gents, because we've been pretty unanimous here. I mean, there's nothing to debate. We're renewing VVD, we're renewing Trent, we're getting those done. That's straightforward. Simicast, we're giving a nice sending on his way, but he is going for us. We've said that can't be debated at the end of the season.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
I'll let you keep it brief, Mark, but I know you kind of, and I agree with what you did. You almost to group them together. Is it Matip is the other one that's shifting on for you this season, or the end of the season, I should say?
Yeah, so like you said, Tsimikas goes for me, and we look for either someone out the youth team to replace, the cover at left back, or Gomez becomes, or however you want to do that. I think we should get what value there is there before it's gone. Like I said, any combo, the centre back thing, whatever they choose to do, I'm fine with it. But my call would be Matip. I would shift him on for age's sake and get Quants up there, but also bring in someone that's gonna put pressure on Kanati effectively to be the starting centre back. And as far as the defence is concerned, that would probably be as far as I would go for people leaving, I think.
Interesting. James E., I know you said Tsimikas that way as well.
Yeah,
is it Matip that moves on as well?
Controversial, okay? Keeping Matip in the dressing room, and Klopp has a conversation with him and just says, look, you're not going to play every game. We're going to bring someone in, but we're going to give you a 1-year contract. The same thing as what he did with Milner, and kind of just working on that. And then at the end of the season, they can kind of sit down and talk and say, right, yes or no. That's what I would do with Matip, because it's too good to just let go. I think that if we had him in that if someone got injured, he can do a game, he can come back, he can recover, and we can bring him back in again. That's a way that I would look at Matip.
Yeah, my only issue with that would be basically that you're kind of blocking Quansah a little bit, because if you bring in another, we effectively have 6 then if Matip stays. If you include Quansah as the 5th currently, you would then have 6 serious candidates, and Quansah would probably find himself as number 6 of the 6 and effectively not play very often. Like I said, I have high hopes for him, and I think we need to open a gap for him effectively.
Only thing I would say about that, Mark, is that we're injury prone when it comes to centre backs, and he'll get his chance 100%. And again, if he plays next year and he still plays in the cups and he still learns his craft, he's still a very young guy. And again, after that, does he get his chance to actually go? Because all you're doing is, again, asset protection. Matip, are we going to get a lot of money for him? Let's ask the question. Do you think we would?
Well, to be fair, I think for me that plays a part in it. Matip's on a free at the end of the season. He's going to be 33. In terms of, like Mark said, experience, that's not an issue. We've got loads of defenders with that. We've got Van Dijk. Even Gomez is experienced, isn't he, when you talk about it as well, for helping, shift along Quansah. I just don't really see. Matip's got an injury record as well that's less than perfect, let's put it that way. That's not going to get better with age as well, is it? It's great. And I don't think, as kind of Mark alluded to, you can't roll into... You shouldn't really be doing it now, but you can't roll into next season where you've got 3 centre-halves where you're thinking they're not going to be able to complete the season. You need a bit of luck, and you can't manage the games of 3 centre-halves. That's not a position that you should be doing it, for me, in that regard. And probably the only other things in summary, gents, I think we've all got a right-back coming in, haven't we? We all said about if Trent's moving up, that was one. If a right-back's coming in as well, keep this brief to finish off, Mark. Is it a centre-back that comes in as well? Matip go in, Tsimikas go in, a right-back and a centre-back coming in for you? Yeah,
it's exactly that. Literally exactly that. A starting centre-back, probably a starting right-back, and then we have to deal with the Trent question. I know we're kind of only doing defence here, but actually, if you look at the rest of the squad, there isn't that much surgery to do. We've really done the midfield surgery. Probably a defensive midfielder, which you could argue is part of the defensive sort of question. Thiago probably goes. When at the end of his year, the front line is really, you wouldn't want to change anything whether Salah decides to go or not. So it does mean we should be able to concentrate on that defence, this summer, which is quite key, because we obviously don't have the funds that other clubs have in comparable to, your Cities, your Chelseas. So if you can really focus your finances on a top right back, a top centre back and a defensive midfielder, I would really settle for that, and in the summer. And even if, the January window is coming up, even if we could try and answer one of those questions now, I think the defensive midfielder one would be the obvious one to go for, because we don't actually have like a proper starter in that position. But if we could get one of those answered now and then go into the summer just needing two, and we like to go and get one early in the summer, it means we could potentially be quite complete come just the first few weeks of the window. However, they are actually really important acquisitions. The right back one in particular. We can't go from, if you don't buy the right one, the question's very quickly going to come around of, should Trent go back in there? It really has to be someone that does well here. Otherwise, having a guy that's done it so well for us for 5 or 6 years, they have to become a clear, better option than Trent at right back, or it's going to cause this awful, constant kind of media circus around, well, put Trent back in there. This guy's struggling, when Trent won't like that. He's now trying to, make his way in midfield. I think we really have to get that one right. And on fitness terms, we have to get the centre-back one right as well.
Yeah, they are big. There's no two ways. Is it same for you, Jamesy? Right back, I know we've talked about a start. Well, is it though? Because you can be honest, I know you're defending Matip's corner here quite bravely. Is it just a right back for you?
No, I think a right back and a centre back. I'm still going to stick, and I think the club's going to have a conversation with Matip and say, look, this is it. You're hardly going to have any game time, but again, we might need you. And he's there, and he's a bit of an influence in the dressing room. So I think that yes, we need a centre back and a right back. Absolutely.
Yeah, I to be fair, I'm with you on this, Mark. I think it's got to be it's a high standard right back, and definitely a starting centre back. I think that Matip goes for me. But the big part, and it might not be, I know this is easier said than done with top quality centre backs, but it's got to be someone who's durable. It's got to be someone who you could see playing 40, 50 games alongside, or has got an unblemished injury record that way type of thing. But we do need that solidity. There's no point in shifting out Matip and bringing someone in again who we've moved beyond that model, haven't we, of taking gambles on the Keiters, the Thiagos. That you've got to be durable in this new Liverpool system. So for me, right back, centre back. But that is the big area for this summer. There's no two ways about it. Last word I'll give to you both. Just keep it brief, gents, but is there any names you're thinking? There might not be, because I know you talked about profile, but any names on your horizons? Mark, I'll come to you first.
I tend not to like to speculate so far in advance of things, because Liverpool always surprise you, and Szoboszlai, for example, wouldn't have been on my radar, coming into the summer. I know he was on some people's, people that watch a lot of European football, but, I didn't realise the level he was at. And then Liverpool go and pluck that one out there, and absolutely phenomenal. So my hope is they sign the centre-back Szoboszlai and the right-back Szoboszlai of next season. But actually, even just to kind of finish on the centre-back point you were saying there about fitness, I would almost take someone not as good as Konaté, as long as they can just play more than Konaté. Nobody's doubting Konaté's quality. It really is just that we need you to play.
Yeah, exactly. And it's why we love Mo Salah so much. Jamesy, any names for you? I know you're not big on names because you're obviously in the Joe Matip fan club here as well. So anyone?
No, Dave, no. I mean, it's too much of a speculation. I mean, we just have to watch and see. We get a bit excited when it comes to summer, and it's like 1,000 names are linked. But at the moment, it's very quiet. There's links with attackers and there's links with the kind of midfielders, but there's anything with defenders. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's been a few links to the Wolves left back. I don't know if you've seen those. Newry, that he's come up a couple of times. I kind of like that one. I'd be happy with that as if Tsimikas goes on that side. But I think that's the easier one, right? Because it's backup. It's not a starter. So I think there's a wide range there of what would do. It could be young, could be experienced. We'd take most things in that position. The other two, it's so hard to speculate on what we need because we're really looking for top level. It really has to be good.
Alphonso Davies, that's what I say, because he's out of contract, isn't he, in the next 12 months, but I don't think we'll get him. All right, my Christmas list.
We can play Football Manager another day, Jamesy? But yeah, there we go. So To summarise, we're both bringing people in. Mark doesn't want to predict because he's pretty shit at it. James is now the chairman of the Joel Matip fan club. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see what defensive decisions Jurgen Klopp brings come the summer. Maybe January, but I can't see it. But we'll see if you're right there, Jamesy. So all it really leaves me to say is, gents, as ever, thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Cheers, Dave.
Well, yeah, really enjoyed that. Little chorus again.
Indeed. And that was another Defensive Decisions podcast for Anfield Index.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.